Welcome back to the Freebird Endurance Podcast. This is your scientist coach, Lunden. If you've ever wondered whether or not you need coaching, this is the podcast for you. We have on a really special guest today, and that is Dr. Robert Lamb, who is new to coaching and relatively new to cycling and training as a whole. He's gone through several generic plans, such as ones you might find on Training Peaks or Sufferfest or Zwift, and found them to be unreliable for long-term gains. Essentially, he plateaued. We'll be going over the past 4 months that I've spent with Robert, what his training has looked like, and how it has benefited them. I hope you enjoy, and as always, be your own scientist. We gotta do it. So, anyways, I want us to start with Jeff's questions because I think they bring us through more of a logical progression. Because obviously, his questions are going to be surrounding your choice as an athlete to get a coach, what those things have looked like, and then we can see the outcomes and my side of things later.
So, Rob, welcome. Just tell us a little about yourself and how you came to coaching.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Rob. I'm finishing up my GI training, and then we'll be happy to join Jeff's group out in Sonoma. And I've been into cycling kind of like casually as a hobby since as early as probably like freshman year of college. The type that just really enjoys cycling for what it is. I don't compete, but I've always loved to push myself and join in on group rides. Currently, the area where I'm at in Connecticut, it's not the biggest cycling town. So I've been sort of doing my own thing, but really excited to be heading out to California in just a couple months, and where it's like cycling heaven and everybody loves to road bike. So really excited to join in on more competitive group rides, and also meet a bunch of new people that way as well. And the terrain is something that's very different on the West Coast compared to on East Coast, which is more rolling hills. So that is something that was part of my decision to get a coach, and to get more structured training to be ready for that.
Yeah, second question. Were you an athlete of some sort beforehand? How did you come to cycling or endurance sports? Cyclists are a special breed by
Yeah.
themselves. Why cycling, or what was your background in sport?
Yeah, so I haven't been like a like competitive athlete in the sense of like actually competing on like any big stages, but I've always like to push myself and enjoy exercise more from like the physical fitness and also the mental health perspective. Earlier, when I was a kid, like used to play like competitive like hockey, being Canadian, that's just what everybody does. But besides that, I got into endurance sports more during college and med school, just as a way to be outside, and um, keep up with just overall fitness goals. And cycling was one of the things that, in a part of where I grew up in Toronto, like there's definitely a big cycling presence. And that was one activity I just wanted to get started with. And that's how I started with road biking. But once I moved over to the city in Philly for med school, cycling is pretty hard to do, given how hectic traffic can be. So I switched over to running and took part in several half marathons. Never did any crazy training for like a marathon, but I think half marathons were just a good way to push myself and see what I could accomplish. And heading into my training afterward, I kept up with running, but slowly started to bring back cycling because where I've been finishing up my training, there's just more roads that are safe to road bike, and so that's been something I've been doing for past 2, 3 years, and I was doing a lot of those indoor cycling exercises from like the Wahoo company. And I think I sort of maxed out on what they were able to offer from their standalone fitness routines and wanted to bring my cycling kind of capabilities to another fitness level.
I mean, I know when we talked that you've done Zwift. Have you ever entered races? Is that something that you want to do to be, or, you know, coaching doesn't have to be a part of why we're talking about this is coaching doesn't have to be for elite athletes who are racing and want to win. That being said, it's fun to race, or at least I think it is, and so it's fun to do hard things with other people. But is racing something that you are interested in, and what kind of racing might that be?
Yeah, I would certainly consider it. I think in terms of racing, I probably do like I mean, I wouldn't consider like Grand Fondos like necessarily races per se, but I do know like I've done one of the larger Grand Fondo races over in New York City several years ago. But something I think over in California they have the Levi's Grand Fondo that can get a little competitive among some. So
I mean, it's the
something.
largest prize pool in the United States, $150,000 for both men and women prize pool. So, oh, I mean, you only have to do 150 miles and 16,000
Yeah.
feet of climbing
And then,
to win.
exactly, and just break your legs. But something along those lines, I think even esports would be something that I'd be interested in trying. Although I don't think I have those fiber muscles for the crazy sprints producing like 1,300 watts for the finish.
There are different ways of winning, but yeah. All right. So you don't have much of a racing background, so
Correct.
choosing a coach was more of a fitness choice, and after you came out riding with us, so that you could so that you could ride and enjoy the terrain more. Is that kind of what your goals were for getting a coach?
Exactly, but also to have more structured training that was individualized to what I wanted to achieve. Because, like you mentioned, everyone goes into a sport with different goals in mind. Some people want to compete on a very high level, others just want to push their own individual goals. And I think I was more the latter, where what was being offered in a market was, kind of just for a generalized audience. And I felt that in terms of my fitness of using the standalone kind of programs out there, that I'd kind of maxed out on what I was able to do. And I felt like I wasn't improving any further in terms of my overall fitness on the bike. And so I felt that it was time to look towards a more individualized and customized kind of approach, which is what coaching really helps with, especially a coach who kind of understands what your schedule is like and also what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, third year of fellowship, depending on how you are, can be busy at times. But how it has having someone who is helping structure your training, has it helped it fit it in better? Do you find that you're training more mainly because someone is there to help plan it? Are you finding it stressful because you think, oh man, I need to get a workout in, and that adds a little bit of anxiety of throwing it in? Or, how has having a coach fit into your life been for you?
I definitely think it helps with keeping one accountable. Like I'm personally pretty self-driven, so I always stick to a routine of like completing workouts. But I think there's also an added like psychological benefit of knowing that someone else is like really also following along and wants is rooting for you and your success. And so that also like helps me like stick with the routine of even if I'm a little tired, like I should really do this because this is like part of the schedule. So definitely helped with that. But also in terms of just knowing that someone is there rooting for you to be better and is adjusting the workouts so that plateaus aren't going to be a problem. I think that is another big plus to the coaching experience so far.
And so, I mean, how has it meet expectations meeting reality? Have you like were you expecting something different, or is that met expectations? How has that lined up?
I think it's really lined up with what I was expecting. London's been really good to understand what my schedule is like on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes when you're on call, it's just hard to predict how the night goes. And even on the very rare circumstances where like I dropped a workout or I was just too tired from the day before, he was able to really adjust for that and for workouts moving forward. So I think if anything, it's 60 expectations. Like we just started working, I think in January, and in the course of 5 months, like the gains I've noticed on the bike, both doing the workouts that he creates, but also riding outside, the difference is definitely very obvious. So I think I'm pretty appreciative of all the help I've received so far.
Yeah, I mean that was the next thing to move. So how have so do you feel like you've gotten more improvement in a short period of time than you've ever seen before?
Exactly. I think so. Compared to what I was doing by myself and just trying different, exercise, kind of training workouts, like in within the same amount of time, I probably noticed an exponentially greater amount of improvement. And I think right now it even seems like there is no ceiling to what I can achieve. Compared to before, like I could definitely see that, after you hit a period of doing the same workout and over, you feel like you're running out of ideas of how to get better. So it's exciting to know that, I'm really there's still so much room for improvement on so many levels, and this is only 5 months in, and there's so much that can be achieved moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard of the term noob gains? Basically, anything that you do when you're not off the couch because you can ride, but this is your first foray into any kind of structure training. Anytime there is that little bit of anything you do will be worthwhile. But where you notice it more that you can go longer or that you feel stronger in all types. I mean, where do you feel like are you? And also, I assume you're enjoying just being on a bike more because it's more fun is fast. That marketing
Exactly.
slogan is very true.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
think number one, in terms of like the distance of like before even going for like I would go for 3 hour rides back then, like a year or two ago, but I felt that, those 3 hour rides would be pretty tolling on the body and I'd need to have a day off afterward. But um, nowadays, my ability to recover, the recovery time is shorter, and I definitely feel like even when I'm doing the same ride, I'm going faster with less exertion, and I feel great. Um, and the Strava was able to compare like the same route I'm doing compared to like 3 years ago, and I'm even going faster. So there's definitely objective evidence I'm getting better in that regard. But I think also in terms of the approach to having someone who has like expertise in exercise physiology. I think before I was just like the workouts I was doing, they were always going hard every single time, and kind of busting the heart rate into like the zone 4 region. But I was actually surprised when, London was incorporating more like sweet spot training and also, training where you're in the endurance or zone 2 level. And I was like, oh, I'm not really exerting myself that much, but I realized that actually it's kind of the long-term gains where you can get better from that standpoint. And the other key component I've noticed that's gone better is like sustained power. I think some of the training programs out there, you get very good at holding like a high power, but that only lasts for like 2 to 3 minutes. But if you're, out, in the wild doing a long climb that might be like 10, 15 minutes, you have to be able to sustain that power and keep that up. And I feel that, with the training I've undergone with London, like I've definitely would be able to do that now, like holding a certain wattage for like 15, 20 minutes. And even sometimes he has workouts where I'm holding for 30 minutes. And like I would not be able to do that like, several months ago. But on the note of like recovery time too, now like I feel like even if I like today I did a 3 hour ride, tomorrow I could do like an hour and 40 minute like sweet spot training with like 4 or 5 intervals where so where I could hold that power without being burnt out by the end. certainly wouldn't be possible 5 months ago. So on many levels, I felt like I've improved. So I think without coaching, it's hard to make those sort of gains.
Yeah. Well,
But
bring it back, kind of Rob and starting. I'm actually going to ask London a question about do you approach it slightly differently if you're dealing with someone who has a long history of being trained versus someone who is really coming to it as someone new to it when of how you approach that athlete?
in terms of nutrition
No,
or in
sorry.
terms
I
of
was more on training and developing obviously training plans of how much you can push someone. But do you spend more time trying to build up goals, or just with someone who has no idea of like what they're if they are coming to this kind of training as someone without any kind of history? Is there more of a break-in period? Is maybe the wrong thing, but someone who comes to you and has a decade worth of having been an endurance athlete, you're working on marginal gains of, but so they're a little bit more of a known quantity. You might not know them specifically, but they have trained out of kind of whatever that you're looking for slight edges in particular, and you can work on specific adaptations. With someone new, you have the world is your oyster. You can do a little bit of anything. And do you have a different approach when if someone new to this comes to you versus someone who has more of a training background? The answer
sure.
could be no. I don't. I just I came to
I mean, that's
you.
actually a really good question. And I would say it's a mix of both.
Okay.
It really depends on, because I can have an athlete that comes to me that's been riding racing for 10, 15 years, and we start talking, and everything they say about racing and training is just, I disagree with it. They're like, oh yeah, hills are the only way to get for you to get faster. And oh yeah, I need to like do these 5 hour crusher rides. And I'm like, okay, you have a good fitness, you have a good base. Obviously, something's worked, but now I need to adjust. Okay, what's the optimal stimulus? What is your body actually telling you? How does that relate to physiological conditions? It's actually been kind of cool with working with both you and Rob because you both have that kind of basic science understanding and of the physiology. Um, and so it's kind of cool that we can kind of go a little bit deeper into at least what I find really interesting, which is like this really nerdy crap. um, where I have other athletes that are just like, dude, give me the training plan. I could care less about the science. I'm just here to get faster and go to nats or whatever. And I have athletes like that. That totally fine, totally fine. That if that's their goal, I'm gonna get them there. So it is kind of individual for someone who hasn't raced or trained or anything like that. I mean, Rob still has had some kind of exercise background. I'm still going to start in a very similar place as I did with someone like you, Jeff, who's had more of like who's gone and is like a world class rowing athlete. I know I'm exaggerating that, but that's just how I
I'll
think you
take
are in
that.
my head. um, and it's gonna be starting like, okay, where can we start setting, this is my training philosophy, this is how I approach workouts, this is how I want you to complete the workouts. And a lot of it is, I mean, with Rob, it was okay, the first workout I had him do, it was like, I'm gonna give you a list of things, um, and they're each going to be attributed to a specific zone or a specific part, physiological RPE zone. That was the first workout. And it's RPE determination. And I basically told them, sit at this amount of watts, tell me how you feel, tell me how this lines up with the moderate domain of exercise. I then said, okay, this wattage should be about the heavy of it, domain of exercise for you. This is what you should feel. Does this line up with how you feel, or do you feel something a little different? And then I said severe domains, and then I gave him like some ridiculous number. And I was like, okay, hold this for as long as you can, and then tell me how you feel. And he comes back, he's like, don't ever make me do that again, but here's how I kind of feel. Um, and so I always like to start with that with my athletes because I find a lot of people especially don't understand what their body is telling them. You can obviously tell, oh yeah, I'm going faster, it feels harder, right? But they don't necessarily understand we can actually break a lot of these feelings, this RPE down into three like general zones. I was just talking with um my roommate's partner who is trying to get into like training a little bit more because they want to do a 100-mile gravel race. And so I was chatting them through. I'm like, okay, if you're interested in training,
this is how I want you to go. I want, because they don't have a power meter, they don't have a heart rate monitor. All they have is RPE. So I told them, here's 3 zones based on your breathing patterns, your ability to talk, and how much your legs hurt. And what also what you're focusing on, whether you're focusing externally, whether you're focused on the bike, or whether you're focused on trying not to like pass out. The 3 zones roughly, right? Um, and so I go more based on kind of there, and I say, okay, I want you to do 2 days intervals there, and then a few days intervals here, and then they go off. Like, oh wow, this is actually kind of cool. I can actually like feel these things out, and they can make specific notes in their mind, like, okay, this is how I'm supposed to feel for this workout, and then at the end, I'm supposed to feel this way. Either the legs can't do one more, or I have a couple extra in the legs, and I feel a little bit better, so that the next day they're like, oh yeah, this is going to be fantastic. Um, and even like hearing Rob say like, "Oh, I did a 3 hour ride this morning." Yeah, like I know tomorrow I can go and I can hit some sweet spot. Like that's also like that's really cool because I never really like talked to him about okay, how are you going to feel the next day? But he's already thinking like, "Oh yeah, this is already good stuff. I'm getting some gains in terms of just my perceived exertion and stuff, which is like a fantastic tool um, because it shows us a lot of the things that may not be in the metrics. Not to say we still had some improvements in its metrics, right? But it kind of shows us, like in terms of recoverability and what are you calling it? In your ability to sustain that power, we can see that in more of the RPE because that's really what it's kind of like. It's telling you how far away from exhaustion you are. And so RPE is a really great determinant for that kind of stuff. It was kind of a long-winded answer, but that's kind of the gist. Is I always try to get them what's the philosophy of endurance training, the philosophy of my endurance coaching, and then trying to get an athlete really involved in kind of the decision making about okay, is this the right zone for me to be doing based on this workout and stuff. And I think we threw in some cadence training because I wanted him to understand, okay, yeah, because he spins at a super high cadence. So if you look at his workouts, he's like at 100, and I'm like, oh my god, I spin at 72, man. I'm a grinder. And I'll even do like some of my intervals at like 60, 65 if I'm just like
Yeah.
really want to do some torque stuff for whatever reason that the science is kind of iffy on. But I just thought it was insane to kind of see some of his really high cadence stuff, which is cool. And so dropping that down or raising it up, how does that impact our RPE as well? Because it does, and it impacts our heart rate too at the same power. And how can we account for that also when I'm looking at some of the data as well? Because when I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, is this an actual physiological gain or is he just spinning at a lower cadence? And that's now I'm like, okay, well, cool, he's learned how to spin at a lower cadence, but is there actually a physiological gain? And we can actually show that because I was able to normalize. Do you I can't help but think. So you said something along the lines of you're always thinking about the next step in life. Like I'm sure for you, it's moving to California pretty soon, and like leaving residency and now having to like work with Jeff because my God, he's awful to work with, right? You've actually been lovely to work with. You've been absolutely wonderful. Um, and I can't help but think, but with coaching, I feel like that can sometimes either get us in the trap of kind of taking the fun out of cycling, or it can maybe help us. Do you think coaching could has done one or the other for you, at least in terms of making cycling fun?
I think so. I think it's definitely enhanced the way I've kind of seen cycling because it allows me to see it from someone else's different perspective and learn how a different approach can achieve even greater results. Like I mentioned earlier, I was just doing things the same way, and sometimes when you're in that sort of tunnel vision, it's hard to realize that there are other ways to achieve the same improvement gains, but even go further in that. So that's why, anyone, even a professional, needs a coach because we're all in our own head. We're our worst judge of ourselves, right? So it's good to have somebody who's outside and can give that guidance. And everybody needs it, no matter who you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think uh, everything is on a spectrum, and too much of anything can be bad. But it is having a neutral third party overlooking what's going on, is useful to have a soundboard to ask, and different people need different things. So, people who are intrinsically, I mean, for some people, coaching is, if they're paying somebody, it's what gets them out to just do something, because that's a motivator. Like, what's the point of paying? It doesn't always work with gym memberships. That's why gyms love January. Everyone signs up and then doesn't show up. But, having somebody you're accountable to, whether it is somebody, having a coach is more individualized, but having a regular group run, or some people group ride, I know that there are days I don't feel great, but I know that I'm meeting up with somebody or I'm racing with somebody, and I'm going to show up because I want that connection. But it is true that you could definitely train yourself into the ground, and that becomes stressful. I mean, I asked that at the beginning, whether you found that was stressful, knowing that you had to get a workout in, because I can sometimes get to that point of like, well, I need to get it in, and then how am I going to fit it in, and where am I going to push this way or that way to try to get it. But I think it is important, as someone who's training and someone who may be new to this, is to know what is it that you need from that external person. And personally, and London and I were joking about it already today, is that I need someone to tell me to slow down. I'm very fine always going hard, but what I needed is like, please put on my schedule easy ride, because otherwise it'll just potentially go harder than I need to. And it is true, as you pointed out, Rob, earlier in the conversation, that you were surprised that going easy allows your body to adapt so that you can go harder on another day. And so I do think a good lesson for anyone thinking about training is know what it is you need. Do you need someone to push you, to schedule your life so that you put in, I have plenty of friends who are like, oh, well, I can never get a coach. I don't have enough time. It's like, you always have an hour. Like, I really, you really, if that's what you want to do. I mean, I'm not saying everyone needs, but like, if you want to train, you can find an hour to go, especially with trainers these days, bike trainers or treadmill. Like, you can find an hour to sneak away to do something. And even an hour of not doing much is better than 0 minutes of doing it. Like, do you need someone to just book it into your Training Peaks or your schedule? Do you need someone you're doing that hour, but you're not going hard enough? Do you need someone to tell you and say, you can do it? That's great. Or, do you need someone to say, like, please take tomorrow off? I can't do it. No, really, just take tomorrow off. You'll be better. And that's where I need a coach, is to someone to tell me to slow it down and to take the race. And so as you think about, kind of gap analysis of like, where is it that you need that neutral person to help out with? And so I think that was an important point to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, I think communication is the big part about any sort of coaching relationship, right? Is like, it's a two-way street. The person who is being coached needs to kind of voice what they're thinking, and the coach also adapts around that sort of feedback. And I think that's how, a successful coaching relationship
100%.
things happen.
Yeah, your personal feedback is such a game changer for me, and me being able to like provide you a really good like training plan and experience. I mean, one of my uh I have one athlete who like competes at a national, he's Cat 1 road cyclist, competes at a national level, and he'll just tell me some days like he's done this kind of training plan before, but he didn't get great sleep from a plane flight, and he just hasn't been adapting well to like the daylight schedule. He's like, yo man, this 1 hour ride is killing me right now. I was like, take the next 2 days off, chill, and then we'll get right back to it. You're gonna be fine. um yeah, it's that kind of stuff. So, Rob, thank you. Thanks a lot for joining us, especially on short notice, since I let you know like this like 4 days ago. I hope this was a productive and fun conversation for you as it was for me.
Yeah, it
Jeff,
really was.
again, thank you for always recording and being here to ask questions and lead the discussion and facilitating very much needed and excellent questions. So, because I am easily distracted and goes off the rails on something like heat training when we didn't even want to talk about that. All right. Seriously, thank you guys. We'll be in touch, and much appreciated, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me in those thoughtful questions.
Absolutely. All right. Talk to you later, Rob.
Great texting.
So, I'm just seeing.
Can't swear on the camera, man.
I know. No, I just realized that I don't think I had not been captured my voice until right now. All right, so sorry, M. We're
We need to
gonna start
redo
this
it?
over again. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
No,
All right.
I
Round
mean,
two.
you just got to say the question, and then she can edit the
all
rest
right,
of the
so
stuff
We're
after.
just gonna.
Right.
Yes, we're gonna edit this back. Sorry. All right. So the question, we're going a little bit backwards, and we'll let her know. But
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Rob.
You don't have to do that again. We'll just
Okay.
edit it in post-production.
Okay.
But second question.
Okay.
Let's go into the blooper reel or something.
Yeah, we'll do. Well, there's gonna be. But yeah, no,
I get nerdy. I get nerdy about these
But
things.
Sweet Spot
You
does
see-
everything.